first and foremost, happy Halloween, everyone, and welcome to a special little stream for our usual like My Hero Academia manga streams. It's a little bit more special because aside from the fact that it is Halloween, we also have a little bit of a review because the latest movie, My Hero Academia World Heroes Mission, it's a pretty big mouthful, premiered this weekend. So both Mark and I, who's on call right now, we have both watched it separately, and we're here to just gather our thoughts together about like where this movie ranks in the three movies, as well as just kind of its significance in the entirety of the My Hero franchise, and just simply like it as a whole, how it stacks up. So, Mark, I know that you had watched it like first, like, right? It premiered, well, technically for some like Thursday afternoon, but others it's just like Friday all day is when it like initially premieres. Christoph and I actually watched it yesterday, Saturday. So I know that he and we got together after the movie and just had like a very brief discussion on like certain things, and I think that's kind of a beauty as far as like watching a movie like just in theaters, because it does kind of, I mean, I guess it depends on like the friend group, but definitely like my group just kind of will be outside the movie theaters just talking about the movie, whether it be all about it or just simply just like jokes that we have like about it, that kind of stuff.
Dog, after Super Broly, I talked with a friend of mine, and then some random dude, and then all three of these other random dudes just came up because I'm just sitting here as this encyclopedia of Dragon Ball knowledge. They're like, "Yeah, that's right, that's right, that's right," and I'm just like, I guess I am just fulfilling their questions right now.
That fountain of knowledge.
They're like, he knows.
He knows. But what'd you think about this movie?
I thought it was really good. Like, I would give it like a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, 9 out of 10. I would definitely give it like personally an 8. I think critically, 7.
Ooh, he hit critically with a 7.
Because it requires like some it requires context. That's the problem. It's not a good standalone film. That's just the course of things when it comes to like I wouldn't say especially, but just anime movies that rely on the context of like its original work to give you much more of a reason to engage. Because if I literally had like one of my cousins who's not at all like involved in My Hero, like have him or her like sit down for this movie, it's just like, well, it's cool, it's super cool, music's great, animation's great, I'm not connected to these characters. And I would say especially in this film, but that's like a little bit later down the discussions for sure.
Super Broly made some people Dragon Ball fans finally, and I was like, ha.
It's true. Broly is like, that's an interesting one because again, I would only recommend it to those who have any type of familiarity with like Dragon Ball, especially having watched like the OG Broly movies. But of course it takes place after Dragon Ball Super, so the animated animation stuff.
It low-key did make people fans, the people that weren't fans before, after saying that they were fans now.
Yeah, and that's to say, like, obviously anyone can like jump into, it's kind of the same thing as far as video games where like the umpteenth,
you can jump into the last game in the series and be a fan if you've never even played the series before.
Right, that's kind of me in Final Fantasy 15 for sure.
Same.
Right, and they even promoted it as such, like when you started off or anytime you started up, it just says like it's a fan for Final Fantasy fans and newcomers alike. And that's,
yeah, they wanted to make it like enough to where people can become new fans, but also enough to where the veterans can still enjoy themselves.
Yes, for sure. So that's why I kind of like, I rank it like how it is that like it's a good movie, but you would definitely have like a higher ranking for it, like with some background knowledge on everything. But having said that though, I think the movie's really good. I think that for a movie that kind of like adds a little bit more filler in between the things of like the actual like timeline, I think it does well in, I guess extrapolating on the impact that this has like on the world, because a lot of the stuff that occurs in the manga, granted, we're starting to like expand that world a little bit more, so as far as like the influences of the villains specifically in Japan. I think that quirks in general having like impacted the population so much so, and this just kind of like highlights it. And even though because how focused in the setting is, and how like it doesn't do much as far as like build up on villains, for example, as far as like their backstories and everything like that. I think with that knowledge, it's really impactful, and I think it provides great context as to like how things in the world of My Hero like I guess affect each other, for lack of better words.
Not to mention the movie kind of hit the ground running, like they didn't hold back.
Do you think that that's kind of the same way with the other movies as well?
I'd say because the other movies they hit the ground running, they definitely did. But in this one literally opened up.
This is very true.
It opened up with a terrorist attack.
Oh yeah, that's very true, because I was just thinking about like the mission op, but yeah, for sure. I was thinking
it legit opened up with people dying.
It was intense. But it was I guess yeah, to start off with that, like I don't really want to like regurgitate the entire sequences of the movie, but yeah, that first opening sequence, it took me just like a hot second to really know what was going on. But then of course the movie gives you context as to what exactly was done and how impactful that is and how threatening that is. Pretty much the idea is that the terrorist group known as Humorize are trying to purify the entire world of quirks. But what's interesting is that they tie this into the timeline that's currently happening in the anime, because they refer to quirks as a different word. I don't remember what it was though. Mark?
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I think it was something along the lines of. I think it might have called them special abilities.
It's close to that. It's very close to that. But I do like that bit because
it was the same thing that the paranormal liberation front called it.
Yeah. Did they reference them at all in the movie? I think maybe once.
Maybe, but I do know that they definitely spoke with the same kind of phrase. It's kind of like, there's the heroes. Then there's the heroes that do their thing, which are very much like the standard, like everyone should be able to use their powers for good.
Right.
You can't just have everyone out there going all willy nilly.
Yes.
Which is fair, because that could cause a lot of chaos. But then you got the Paranormal Liberation Front, before Shigaraki took it over. Which is it's basically this. They were more along the lines of, I guess you could say, during the Civil War of Marvel, like first registration versus anti-registration.
Mm-hmm.
To where it's like they should be able to use their powers to protect themselves. They don't have to be registered or get in trouble for protecting themselves with their powers.
Mm-hmm. I would say.
I mean, like,
go ahead.
It's which I can agree to that with an extent. To an extent, I think that if you are in a dire situation and your power can protect you, I feel like you should have every right to use it to protect yourself.
But it definitely crosses like a fine line, because there's protecting yourself, but then there's also kind of like abusing it.
Oh, of course, there's always potential to abuse it.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
okay.
Just to provide the context, they refer to them as meta abilities.
I was thinking that might have been it, but I wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much like looking through a lot of context up. I have like several tabs open, specifically just to highlight on characters in the movie, but I just have like a tab open up specifically about the quirks, because another parallel that they refer to in the movie that applies into the anime, a little less so, but it's definitely part of like the arc that we're currently in. So we were talking about quirks and like how they're referred to as meta abilities, and that within itself kind of gives you an idea of the stance of this organization about quirks. They follow specifically on the hypothesis that was published. I think it was called Quirk Chaos Theory.
Quirk Doomsday Theory.
Doomsday Theory. You're right. Essentially, and this is super cool. I like this part about the anime and the manga where they highlighted when Bakugo, Shoto, and a couple of the other classmates from that other school were in the act of trying to get their licenses, provisional licenses. They actually had to do a little bit of daycare services with a lot of these children who have like kind of unidentifiable quirks that were a little bit stronger than what a normal like kid would go through. And the idea was that it deals with this theory called quirk singularity, where eventually with all these different mixtures happening, you're going to come across a lot of quirks that you can't control and can end up being a little bit more of a threat than simply a baby like glowing in the dark.
Yeah, because they get bigger and bigger and bigger.
And so with that, Humanize as an organization tries to purify a lot of people by triggering these bombs that use like a different like a magnified version of cellular activation, which pretty much causes people's quirks to go awry. Wow,
It's essentially trigger. It's trigger, but worse.
Yes. And so what it leaves quirkless people both traumatized but also surviving.
Yeah, they just saw literally people just fucking explode from their quirks.
Oh my god, that was intense. Someone like shot buildings with their laser eyes. Someone just turned to a turtle.
Dude, that poor guy that just caught on fire.
Oh my god, dude. There was another woman out there too. I don't remember what it was. It could have been like one of the main like villains that was talking, but I could have sworn that there was a little bit more coverage on people just kind of freaking out over the case of all this. But pretty much like that scene set it up where it's like these guys are absolutely no joke, and I believe just for the sake of the viewers, that's to signify like they're really like a big threat like in this movie, therefore explain like why all this stuff is happening, where you literally hit the ground running, having all these heroes already assembled before even having like some breathing room for like a good intro, if anything. So
They're just that dangerous.
I would say that like the first movie, for example, does a better job. I wouldn't say really better job because it's kind of subjective. They do a good job though at just kind of giving you an introduction to what's happening as far as the setting. Shows Deku and All Might, they're already on a plane, and that's where a lot of the introductions happen. And then they land on the remote island. Was it an island or was it like?
Mm-hmm.
It was either an island or a ship. It was like a very large ship that just accommodated so many different like things.
I think it was an island.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. The idea was that like in that movie that was a like consistently moving island. Almost pretty much like a Quirk Expo, if you will.
Quirk Expo, QuirkCon.
QuirkCon. Oh my god, dude! That don't hold your breath. I think. Well, actually, you know what? I think they might actually do that. We might actually see that later. That seems like a convention for fans by fans. But let's see. I would kind of going back to those three movies. I say that again. This one's like really good, but if we're comparing it between like the three, I would kind of rank it like as the lowest. Still good, still really good, but I would still put like Heroes Rising up top because of
it really still is up top.
I think it's really up top because of the fact that it focuses on our like class 1A specifically.
it was supposed to be the original ending for My Hero, and the way they did it was just so fucking good.
Yeah. And I believe whether or not people know the significance of that or know that context, I think in and of itself, it provides something a little bit more special because of the fact that it's modeled after the original ending that Horikoshi had in mind, but yet done in a way so that like it can, like, the movie can still exist and be part of the canon while the original work still like keeps going. So I mean,
On top of that, just the music in the fight scene at the end of Heroes Rising is just chef's kiss.
and that's also something I want to talk about too. I think that the animation for like Heroes Rising, as well as like Two Heroes, as well as like this current one that we're talking about, World Heroes Mission, they're all good, and
That's all really good.
it's all really good. I think though that World Heroes Mission consistently has better animation than average, I would say, among all three.
Better than average, but I will say I think it's better than average, but I think in terms of like, the scene that really pushed the movie, I feel like Heroes Rising pulls ahead.
I like how you like phrase it like that because, of course, both the first two movies have that type of like energy to them, as well as this movie as well. But I think that Heroes Rising has a much more impactful like final ending to it. Not just because just the feeling of it, the what's at stake at that point. I mean, granted, it's all kind of the same way as far as what's at stake, but
Bakugo melted a mountain.
But I also want to say that like I don't want that to like be like a heavy weight as like leading into like what's like the better animation here, because
Oh, of course not. I'm just saying, of course not. But I'm just saying for a scene that really just drives it home. I think Heroes Rising had that in shades, so many different shades.
I also kind of want to highlight because even prior to the second movie's like end fight, it did build up to it with just like consistent, like if not above average animation, with just all the characters doing their own thing in their own fights. Because even just simply the one where like Mina and Tokoyami were fighting against like crazy hair girl like in the cave.
Oh yeah, her.
I think that was super cool as far as to, like, the close combat with Tokoyami, but also like Mina like doing like the quick backflips here and there. I just think that like all that was really good too. But of course, like the final fight was definitely like cranked up to like 1,000. And I would say that
those animators were like, plus ultra.
and if I'm going to like skip ahead, I think that World Heroes Mission's like final fight animation was like in the beginning like still really really good, especially like as like the action starts to build even more, and here comes the spoiler alert here. When Deku goes 100% on his full cow, I would say that because it was already established in the second movie, like this one was a little slightly more tame, but it was at the same time like out there to a point where I honestly feel like the direction given to the animators was like, make this a thing that occurs, but make it so incomprehensible, like in the foundation of like the physics involved. Because
essentially what it reminded me of, essentially is All Might versus Nomu.
This is very true, and you know what?
He had the like shock absorption. He's like, "There's a limit. There's got to be a limit." So he just kept punching.
So, I guess I'll also talk about that too. Christoph and I were talking about parallels as far as like what this movie has done as references to our existing stuff that happened, as well as giving you ideas of things that happen in the future. So the final fight in which Deku like talks about how there's a limit to this guy's and we're talking about Fleck, the final villain. Doesn't have a villain name or anything like that. He just has his own like name.
Can I just say how much, because you realize what his name is, right?
I have no idea.
Flecked. You get that? Reflect.
Oh shit. Oh my god, dude. I just realized it. His quirk is reflect. So, okay. I get it now. I didn't even like. I didn't even put that
Meta.
together. I'm over here sitting at like level 1 thinking like they literally just called this girl clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance.
And I didn't
I
even
like her
like
power though. Her power was cool.
I didn't even think about level 2 Flector.
His power, I thought his power was pretty cool, but like as a villain, I thought he had a good story. I thought his story was compelling in a sense.
Mister, and I've never been embraced.
It's just because I thought that was actually an impactful line where he said, "My quirk that was so powerful, like I even reflected their feelings." It's like that he felt like no matter what it was, he'd reflected even people's feelings, and that's why he was always left alone. I was like, so sad.
Ah, that's where they got you. But I'm over here like it's nice and all. If you had shown that like maybe 30 minutes earlier in the movie.
I was like, I mean, but still, it's like hearing it, it's like regardless when it was, just hearing it, I'm like, that's so fucking sad.
Listen, nothing can amount to sadness like Shigaraki's like origin.
Oh God, pain.
So you know what, Flecturn? Actually, I got nothing on that one, but I'm kind of like jumping all over the place. But let me just go over to like the parallels. There was also the I actually like typed it down somewhere here. Oh, yeah. So, and like a lot of the things that were kind of like referenced here are just kind of just references, and they don't really have any other impact other than just showing people like callbacks. They're like, oh, actually, this kind of seems familiar.
I remember that.
That moment when Rhodey at the end of the movie is getting past the door into the big room that like Deku's currently fighting in. Fleck actually has Deku pinned to the ground, and the way that they like cut between him looking at like Rhodey and him giving Deku the advice to kick this guy's ass
Like
is
Aizawa.
it's exactly the same as when he fought Muscular.
I was thinking Aizawa, but you are right. It did have it was like muscular.
Right. But of course, like that within itself is just like a reference and not much else. Even if you didn't even recognize that, it's totally fine. The next one,
like I recognize the part that it was muscular. The part that I recognized from that was I won't you won't get past me. I won't let you through. But that I was like, that's absolutely a muscular reference.
that's also true as well. I didn't even like catch that part of it. The other one is Bakugo becoming Swiss cheese.
Dude, pain.
Now, I felt so bad about Bakugo like in this entire movie because for the most part he was on his best behavior.
I know, like he was honestly like he's being golden boy. He's just like, I am being good boy.
Which is such a stark contrast versus how he was like in the second movie, where it really was like he was on his own. Well, I mean, like Class 1A was on their own, so he was able to kind of act independently of himself. He was still very conscious about it. He was very collective about like his involvement in the beginning of the movie, but like once like what was it, 9 showed up, he went all out as much as he could.
He said, well, fuck it.
Yeah, having said that though, I think that in this movie, like he really went all out, like especially at the end. Like I think it shows like a really cool like bit about Bakugo in the sense that like he is actually a lot more collected in this movie as far as like what he does, because
he's very intelligent. Like we know he not only is he strong, he's very smart.
And like when it comes to push comes to shoves to an actual mission, he's not one to like act too rebelliously, because when during the stealth raid, and granted, like I want to shout out the fact that like they promoted like their stealth suits so much to only be shown like 10 minutes.
I was like, I thought this would be the suits for the whole movie.
Nah, bro. That's where they got you. The Three Musketeers? What?
I mean, they really were. They really were the whole movie.
Kind of. I think that this movie was a little bit more Deku like orientated with Rhodey, and I get that. I understand. I understand like with the context of the movie that like it had to be like that, but of course, it was kind of cool for the trio to kind of act independently outside of like their own like stations. But I think that
Well, Deku, our boy Izuku, was fighting Big Boss Fleck. We're talking about Bakugo's fight before.
Yeah.
Should we mention the two villains that he was facing?
Yeah, that was the last two that I never really got to pull up like on the listings here.
Yeah, those twins.
They're twins.
And they've got what I would argue is another Bleach thing.
Another Bleach
it's
thing?
It's legit. Roar, Zabimaru! It's just the sword that's got can like go around. It's like the chain sword.
Yeah,
There's actually got flexible blades.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like another similarity. I mean, the next thing I could think of is Naruto's Kimimaru, when they have that type of dynamic where it was an extendable like sword like thing, whip.
A sword whip that's got like chain links like that.
Yeah. A little bit further out, Violet's weapon in Smash Brothers, as well as just like in Fire Emblem Three Houses, is pretty much the same thing.
I always like those swords though. Those swords are always so fucking tight.
Mm-hmm. I know that Shoto has his own moment in the movie, but I wanted to say that like Bakugo's fight was definitely so unfair for him, but he still pulled through, so I gotta give him credit.
That man, it looked like he popped a blood vessel in his eye. His eye went red. That usually means you popped a blood vessel.
There's also that. I also know that he was already scuffed up on the right side anyway.
And his shoulder blades, he just blah.
Yeah, he was really out there and he was gonna get killed. I felt so bad for him like at that moment because like he's just doing him, and for the most part he was
for a second.
He was really picking up like a lot of like the heavy load as far as taking care of everyone at the end of the movie, in just sheer numbers. But then he had to deal with the twins, and I just thought that was such an unfair like thing to throw at him.
Not to mention, he had to take care of them once, and then you take care of them again once they use trigger.
This is true. Like, that's so unfair. But I guess he did it.
And then you move on to Todoroki's fight, and he's legit fighting this hollow like monster. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
So I think I got his bio here. His name, I don't even know if it was ever mentioned. His name is Leviathan.
Makes sense. He looks like a Leviathan.
And his quirk, apparently, this is according to the wiki, so it could be wrong, it's called helical, or helical, if you will, scythe. Allows him to create powerful twisted streams of water from the red appendages, like from his fingers and head. So nothing about flame manipulation, according to what Shoto said, but sure.
I think it's the fact is he can take whatever you throw at him, he can work with it.
This is true. Like,
he was a monster.
I do like this. I think this is like a really far off shot from like a possible reference, but the fact is that Shoto acknowledges that Leviathan utilizes his quirk differently depending on the situation, and just kind of reminded me of like how Mirio utilizes his quirk, and it's like something made out of something, or he does something out of like the quirk's like original like usage.
He applies it in a way that he shouldn't be able to, because he's practiced and uses quirk so much, he can.
Mm-hmm. I also just want to like criticize the fact that like we have these super powerful quirk people, and they still follow this dude who really wants to clean out all quirks.
Well, I mean that's the thing. It's like it's like the same thing. Like with in certain parts of reality, like even in our reality, there are people who feel guilty. Like, they're raised from a certain age and they believe something so hard that even if they are this thing, they can be taught to hate themselves and want to do something different.
That's true. Actually, you know what? Yeah, Fleckturn said the exact same thing too. Is that even though they have these powers, as long as you're using this to restore humanity, and that's how he gets them, then
that's your way to forgiveness.
Yeah, that's their way to forgiveness.
I mean, the one girl with the arrows. I mean, you saw that she was so dedicated to the cause. She said, "Nope, you're not capturing me. I'm dying."
Yeah, you know what? Her name is Burroughs. Because I just have it pulled up here. She was kind of the more prominent like villain working under a villain character.
Cool power.
Her power is literally called longbow, and it's pretty much exactly how it is. You create a longbow.
But here's the thing. While that was what was cool about it as well, not only just the fact that she could turn her hand into a bow at any time, which I thought that's fucking cool. It was also the fact that she can control the arrows.
She can control like the arrows, the trajectory of like any type of object. Honestly, if she like lets loose it from that.
Smart bullet.
The parallel that Kristoff pointed out was the fact that this is a call to like Lady Nagan, really. If like very light, because Lady Nagan's an absolute menace. Whereas like Barrows here is not too much of a menace, but definitely is one of those like introductory villains where it's like, ah shit, she seems like a really, really big threat. But you know, once Bakugo and Todoroki show up like later on in the movie, intercept the attacks from Barrows alongside another person. I think his name is Sidero. Pretty much his
like the big balls.
He has the Iron Ball quirk, which pretty much acts as just simply Minetta's, as well as like the Gigantification quirk from that other dude at the provisional licensing combined. So pretty much he lends her like his quirk so that she can shoot them off, and it's a pretty good like combination. But the funny thing is the fact that like once he got apprehended immediately,
he said, "I'll tell you anything.
I'll tell you anyway." And then Barrows over here is like, "You traitor!"
I know, she just kills him immediately. Traitor!
Holy shit! But I will say that was like her sacrifice was pretty impactful. Like everyone just kind of like looked and were like, "Well, shit."
And it's like, oh shit, they're that serious.
Or at least she's that serious. And you know, they did a pretty good job just showing like developing like her loyalty despite like not having much info about her herself. So I'll give them like props to that, because otherwise my big thing about like this movie is the fact that there isn't a lot of build up to the villains. Not a lot. Even like Flecht having like his own thing about like the issues of being able to reflect. I mean, that's his that's his huge trade-off, honestly. We talk about, I mean, granted, like not every single villain had like quirks so developed to the point where like we're devising about like how it can like be a hindrance to them. But for Fleck, there was definitely a big hindrance in the sense that like you lose that physical connection with people as a result of being able to reflect everything. I do want to give shout outs of like how they animate like the reflection actually occurring.
That was wild looking.
I think they set it up so that only Deku in this point could be the one to really deal with him, or at least at that time. I think depending on the situation, like maybe they could do something different. And that's like a whole discussion within itself for sure.
But also, there's another thing we should be mentioning. We mentioned his name. We should talk about him. The new main boy, Rhodey.
Rhodey. Okay, yeah. So, actually, I don't have Rhodey's bio like propped up here. I'll definitely just do that right now. But I really like Rhodey. In the sense that he is kind of the only like character that's like fully fleshed out for a good reason, because essentially the movie kind of like has dual protagonists. Deku like fills in one spot and Rhodey fills in the other ones, whilst everyone else is kind of like on the side.
Yeah, they're kind of on the side. I would say that there's technically 4, because I do think that even though they seem kind of like they were on the side, I do think that in the general scheme of things, Bakugo and Todoroki were also main characters.
You know, that's pretty justifiable too. They had much more of an impact than other characters in the movie.
Absolutely.
You know, I know that there's a bit of there's I think there was some trivia or even some context about Rhodey's character. It doesn't really show it up on the wiki or anything like that, but I believe that Rhodey was actually supposed to be a character that is technically non-binary.
Really?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that if you don't know.
I don't think I heard anything about that. If it is, okay, but I mean, I don't think.
It's one of those things where it's like, obviously, if you didn't know, it doesn't matter. If you knew, it doesn't matter in this movie. because Rhodey is Rhodey. But I just remember like a while back. I'll even like double check. Like what exactly was it? Because of course, like sex wise, like he is like a male.
Oh, he's
Um,
definitely a guy.
right. And I think it's because of the fact that I followed up on the story in the sense that like Rhodey's like character was apparently not very specifically like male in that sense, and I went into this movie thinking about that, and I checked and listened and paid attention to any type of like pronouns being used for Rhodey, and Rhodey's character, whether Rhodey said anything or someone referred to Rhodey, they never said any pronouns. So except for like Fleck at the end where you just said like you're admirable man or like something like that, and that was just like a one-off thing, not a huge thing to even talk about. I just wanted to like, just bring that out there into the universe that like if that was the case, then it's like, well, all right, good job, because that was honestly like something that was not at all ever brought up in the movie and was not even a significance. But I do want to say, just kind of transitioning out to the main thing that we want to talk about Rhodey is that Rhodey is like probably the best character like in the movie because of how fleshed out this character ended up being. So huge spoilers again, but Rhodey's whole backstory is that his father ended up becoming affiliated with the Humorize organization, and I think the movie does a good job at this because despite what a lot of people started to believe in the sense that they believed that what was the name of the father? Eddie Soul.
It was what now?
Yeah, Eddie Soul.
It was Eddie Soul.
Was apparently like was assumed to be a humorized like accomplice because of his own free will. Not as much so because his family was online. So kidnapping. So they don't really go into detail like how he passed, but he did pass and caused Rhodey and the two other siblings, I don't remember their names immediately, but is one of those things where word of mouth spreads fast and has caused Rhodey and actually the entire Soul family going forward to live in poverty, and Rhodey as a result taking on these odd jobs, specifically in the villain side of things, which doesn't really paint a good light, but it's one of those interesting things where again, here's another like parallel where Deku acknowledges the fact that Rhodey has done wrong but still wants to save Rhodey because he believes that at the end, like if Deku can save someone like that, then I think it's worth it. In that parallel, just being like Deku deciding that he wants to save Shigaraki despite everything that's happened, if he can. But yeah, going back to Rhodey, aside from the whole build up, Rhodey having this exterior that is, I don't really care about like what I'm doing as long as I'm providing for my family. I think everything's justified. Everything just kind of went in a certain direction because Deku is just that type of character that influences other characters to just simply like change their behavior. Like that's partly Deku's quirk essentially. He has more main protagonism. He's able to change the way people like end up being. But Rhody'S Quirk specifically, it's a pretty big spoiler here too, is actually the bird that is just sitting on a shoulder. Pino is like this little tiny bird with the exact same like character design scheme as Rhodey. And it turns out that like Pino is actually much more of a part of Rhodey than you would ever expect it to be.
Much more.
Because Pino is actually a part of Rhodey in the sense that Pino will express Rhodey's true intentions no matter what like front that like Rhodey gives off to you.
In short, Pino's his quirk.
Yes. which is
Pino is his quirk is always active. He can't shut it off.
and that's interesting. Quirks that are always on, because Fleck also has the same like situation going on with that too. I have the quirk brought up here. The quirk is literally just soul, which manifests like a little small bird-like animal. Just linked to Rhody's soul. Actions reflect inner feelings, even if Rhodey tries to hide that.
So it's basically a walking, talking lie detector.
Right, which is interesting because like you look at once you find out about that quirk, you start to really look back on like Pino's behavior throughout. Because Pino, I mean, here's the thing that happened like in the middle of the movie was the fact that Rhodey wanted to and this is interesting too, because Rhodey wanted to whatchamacallit, he wanted to return that briefcase that was part of a humorized employee. Whatchamacallit, pretty much like called police, and of course unknowing to Rhodey, the entire like police is kind of under Humorized's control. So
I mean, well, at least the chief is.
At least the chief, which is pretty impactful as it is, because like that dude can
He
literally
the whole damn place.
Yeah, that dude can literally control like certain people going in there. So here comes big. Actually, what was that guy who shows up?
He has a name. He has a name. I just forget, but I just know that he had iron clubs and an ogre-like appearance.
Okay, I had it pulled up because I literally pulled up all the villain names here, except for a few. But one of them is Rogon, and he's the one with the iron club quirk. No particular like was a detriment to the quirk. It's just simply to grow in like huge muscle mass and also create like iron clubs from both like arms. And that's pretty much everything about it. Pretty much just like an Oni like appearance.
Basically big ogre man.
What's interesting is that like in the wiki they literally just give him whatchamacallit, just like a birthday and everything like that. And I'm like, whoa, all right. Let's see. Well, what was I going off with that? Oh yes. So Rhodey was off like calling the police while Deku was sleeping, but yet Pino was actually in the cave trying to wake Deku up and warning him about like the danger that was going to happen, which is super weird, right? Because at that point, like at this point, we know that Pino is an extension of like Rhodey's true intentions. So I'm left here thinking that like Rhodey still commits this action, but deep down Pino expresses the fact that like, no, I actually don't really want to do this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And also we should also talk about the fact that like,
I think it's either that or maybe Pino also has some type of consciousness.
I think so. Yeah, it's interesting because now that we know that they're much more linked together, you kind of like make the assumption that everything they do is linked to like one another, if not just Rhodey. But I don't know, like I think they did a good job of just hiding like what Pino really was. Pino just seemed like a one-off character. I was like, oh, that's just a thing. All right. So when Pino farts on Deku,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But it makes me wonder, like, wait, did Rhodey want to fart?
Now you see, I think that she's basically just she can't hide his feelings, but I think Pino also has somewhat of her own personality.
Maybe. I think at the end of the day, like this is obviously a character written like devised up, and there can obviously be some weird like contradictory things that can pop up, but ultimately you can treat them as separate characters for sure. It's just really funny when you look at it like that and you're like, huh, interesting. It definitely hits a little bit more when like at the end when Deku says goodbye. And Rhody's like, yeah, it's cool. You know, it's whatever. And then you just see Rubino over there just crying. And Deku like picks up on that and just gives him a hug. And I'm like, oh, my dude.
I know Rhodey just sitting there like, yeah, it's whatever. I mean, hey, don't even come back, man. You're like, too much stress when you're here. The next thing you know, you see Pito's over there just like.
Yeah, I will say that the pacing of this movie is actually really interesting because it does, like, obviously it has like the beginning, which is supposed to like really shock folks and viewers like in theaters or whenever you watch it. And then there's the sequence of like the whole stealth mission, which is kind of like your introductory like mission. And after that, it goes down to just simply quiet life, knowing a little bit more about Rhodey, and then like the sequence of events that happen that gets Rhodey and Deku mixed up in conflict. I want to say that I think Rhodey and like the parkour that's shown off is justifiable because it's just like simply the work behind what Rhodey does. It's fine. I will say though that they completely just does Deku dirty. I mean, like, Deku's fast as fuck, boy. But
absolutely, they did him dirty as fuck.
Yeah, but you know what? I can just kind of let that like slide because that was some pretty slick animation despite that. So, but what else was there I want to bring up? Oh, I guess there's like a couple acts being shown off here, like because of that introductory, and then like Deku and Rhodey like on the run was like super interesting. Oh, really a funny bit that actually got me a little bit more was the fact that like Deku, as he was like giving Shoto a quick text just to let him know like in code what he was up to. It was like, don't forget to eat strawberries and something in the morning. Why is Deku telling me what to eat?
Why is he telling me what to eat?
I was like, God damn it, Shoto.
Not only that, I already told you one of the scenes that I found very funny was just Izuku running after the train.
Yeah, really. Then the guy was just like, "Oh, what?" It's funny that he was.
You see the operator freaking out. All you see is Izuku just getting closer and closer and closer. And Ronnie's like, "There's no way he's chasing at this train, right?" Wait a minute. Looks back, smacks his face in the windshield. Ah!
So, and then also yeah, I think there was just like a lot of like interesting like settings that like occurred here that kind of, I mean, granted I don't really have much like insight on like how pacing should really work, but I would say that pacing was kind of strange in this movie, but like as just a standard like person to watch this, it was totally fine with me.
Story was really good.
I still liked it for what it was, for sure.
Like I thought, like story wise, I think it was actually really good.
Yeah, I think for me the weakest link really was just the buildup of the villains, because you really just like humorize like as an organization, like you kind of get it, you get why they're like this, but as far as like true motivations, because everything should like honestly start like personally and then build up to something. Like Fleck was kind of the only person with like a bit of like context as to why he ran this in the first place, because he really found his quirk to be like a big curse to him because he wasn't even able to make connections. I did like though that Deku pretty much criticized him like on the spot for that. It's because he weren't really trying.
He's like, dude, you just fucking gave up. You didn't even try. He's just like, shut up.
I know,
your life could have been happy. Shut up. You just gave up, you bitch. Just like, shut up.
And I think Deku's in a really good position to really like bring that up because of the fact that like, one, he's quirkless, and two, in comparison to like literally everything, and they're kind of shoving this down your throat at this point, because I think I don't think it's a huge criticism. It's just kind of like what I've seen was the fact that Deku always referenced like something, the ideals of what heroes do.
I mean, hey, at the end of the day, that is what the series is about. It's about being a hero.
This is true. So I can't really, yeah, that's one thing where I'm like, okay, I can't really like really nitpick at that. So it's fine at the end of the day. I just think that like everyone else, unfortunately, like Barrows, for example, I want to know more about like her backstory, but she really just came off as just simply the loyalist person.
I had a feeling I was like, this seems like it would be Justin's type of character.
What do you mean?
The bow and arrow, the hood, everything about it.
Oh yeah, well, it wasn't specifically because of that. Like I kind of gravitated towards her because she had a lot more screen time, and the fact that she had like a resemblance to Lady Nagant as far as like what she does.
And Lady Nagant is fucking tight.
She's cool as fuck. Honestly, she should have been in the movie somehow. But yeah, no. Like I do like if anything, I do like Barros's design for sure. And
you know, like I was thinking mostly his design was.
Yeah. It's just it does kind of suck because like to like a T loyal to a point that she will literally jump off the helicopter.
She's like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
That was pretty intense too, because it really was like, well shit, I'm out of arrows. I'm useless. I can't be caught. All right. Goodbye.
And arrows, you didn't get any information out of me. Yeah.
Bro, when even Bakugo is kind of just shocked as to what he just saw, that's when you know.
He's like, did he actually just fucking do that?
It was so wild. Also, just, shout out to Bakugo just being like the whiz in the group when they were like looking into like what this like piece of data had in mind. He literally went in there and just manhandled like the files.
All of a sudden. He's like, hey, I may be angry and I may say a lot of shit. Doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about though.
This is true. And I think with the context of the fact that like Bakugo is a lot smarter than you give him credit for. Even smarter than Deku, technically speaking.
In certain areas, I would say absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why I looked at like Bakugo and seeing how he was able to like really tap into what the file said as far as even like triangulating like the location of like where the actual like base was. I was kind of like, okay, that's totally fine. Also, kind of last closing things to say is that I did like the fact that Rhodey, as far as like family concerns, were tied into the movie as far as the organization, but it wasn't like the biggest pivotal point of the movie, I would say, aside from the fact that like Eddie's soul worked with this guy Alan, who was the guy on the run before he got assassinated. They were the ones behind trying to stop Humorize from the internal level. They were creating like this code that was to deactivate all these trigger bombs. But aside from that, just the fact that Rhodey was involved only on the sense that Deku was kind of involved. The fact is that Rhodey's family was at risk because of the trigger bombs. That's what called Rhodey to action, and it wasn't because of some destiny thing or anything like that. I think all the other characters are also the same way too, as far as like I forget the kid's name in Heroes Rising, but you know, like him and his sister were also like victims of like, you know, losing like their parents, specifically their dad as well, simply because like Nine just needed that quirk power. And then there's of course Melissa and like David. They had a little bit more of a pivotal role in that department, but I guess at the same time, now that I think about it, Melissa's call also in the same like standing as, you know, Rhodey, with slightly different circumstances, but their actions are a lot more driven by the actions of the other heroes, our main cast. And so I guess that's the same thing with the kid too in Heroes Rising. So yeah, I just kind of like did introspective of that. I was like, oh, actually, you know what? There's quite a bit of parallels there. Not that that was a bad thing. I think it's just, I like that they have a significance like in the writing because they're just driven to do this. Because just how the character is. Like Rhodey cares about like, I wish I knew the kids' names, but like that's all family that Rhodey has. So considering that that was the main driving point, like I can appreciate that. Instead of like, obviously Rhodey has like these dreams and ambitions like of being a pilot, but aside from just getting the heroes from point A to point B, there wasn't much of a significance there. But because Deku was there, we kind of have an idea of like what Rhodey wants to do like later on in the future, but that had nothing to do with the actions that Rhodey did like in the movie. So, all right, but ultimately, I definitely enjoyed the movie, and if you're one who dives into My Hero Academia stuff, I'd totally recommend it. If anything, just to see all these different new quirks and seeing all the parallels as far as like where this would be placed in like the arc so far. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Okay, I agree. I pretty much agree in saying that pretty much how I feel. It's a really good movie. And honestly, if you love My Hero, you love it. I mean, we love My Hero, we loved it, and we think that it's good. We think that you'll definitely enjoy it if you watch it. A lot of cool quirks, a lot of cool concepts, and some funny scenes, some really good animation in the fight scenes. Honestly, just go check it out.
Mm-hmm. I would also say that personally, like another reason why I would probably rank it lower than the other two movies is because the characters, like our main class 1A, are so divided up regionally, and it's understandable why, but it's also because of that like it doesn't appeal that much more to me than it does the other movies, because they had a lot of specific character roles in a movie that's kind of about coming of age, and not that being specific to one character, but like literally the entire like class as a generation of heroes. It kind of loses that in return to just kind of telling this new story. So I would still say it's really good. It's just that like, because like I find a coming of age story, like not just by one character but an entire generation of people, to be a little bit more appealing to me. That's why I kind of rank it a little bit lower. But
understandable.
Yeah. So all right, I think that's pretty much it on the talks for the movie. I know we have a manga chapter to read now.